So, welcome everybody to Beyond the ID Transition. We are super excited to have you here. I'm Kristen. I'm a bootcamp pro on Devlin's team. I'm a former teacher and I was able to successfully transition from teaching to ID. My first role was in a corporate ID role. And one thing that really helped me when I was making the transition is hearing from others. And so I'm super excited for all of you today to hear from others who have successfully transitioned because I know that there's a lot that you can take away from it. So speaking of one of those people who have successfully transitioned here is Sabrina.
Hello, I'm Sabrina, another one of the bootcamp pros on the team. And like Kristen, a former teacher, transitioned to instructional design. I'm a freelance instructional designer, and it always amazes me how different life is. And I think we're going to hear a lot of that too from the people that we speak to today, all of our wonderful panelists. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Sabrina. Okay, so now the really exciting part. So today, Sean Anderson, Lucy Aguilar, and Jackie Flavio are going to join us to tell you about their transition to instructional design, and then they're going to be able to answer your questions about how to succeed on the job. So with that being said, let's get started.
Yeah.
Uh,
And just
oh,
really quick,
sorry.
I was going to say too,
Mhm.
yeah, feel free, everybody, as you have questions, go ahead and drop those in the chat and we'll save those for at the end where we can ask them Q&A stuff. So as questions come to you, go ahead and feel free to add those in.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Sabrina. Okay, shall we get started with Jackie?
Sure. Thank you. Happy to be here, everyone. So I also was a teacher. I was a high school art teacher and I transitioned into ID very quickly. I was like 8 months pregnant and I was like, I'm gonna change my life and do something different. And so in it's crazy when I think about it now, but like 4 or 5 months, I just started Devlin's program and then just went through it really quickly and developed my project and portfolio website and then just started applying to everything I possibly could. And then found my current job where I'm currently an associate instructional designer with ELB Learning. And I'm loving it. It's been great. Yeah.
Good. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Lucy.
Hi, everyone. It's nice being here. And yeah, I was a teacher for 15 years. I taught Spanish. Um, Previous to that, I actually did some work on a television station, and then I went to teaching, and now I successfully transitioned to instructional design. I started looking for jobs when I was tired of teaching, I guess. I started looking for jobs and I was looking for remote jobs because I have a kid. And as I was looking, I saw this instructional designer and I started reading and I was like, wait a minute, I can already do all those things. So why not? And so then at first I started doing it by myself. But turns out that I'm not like very good at it. So I just joined the bootcamp because I needed some structure. I needed to learn from mentors, and I was in a good place. And right now I work for Florida Blue or Blue Cross Blue Shield of Florida, and I'm an instructional system designer. That's my title, and it's being really nice. It's like totally different, but I'm enjoying every moment of it.
Thank you so much. It's always exciting to hear how everyone came into their idea role. So thank you so much for sharing. Okay, Sean.
Hi, everyone. Yes, so my name is Sean. Before I was an instructional designer like others here, I was a high school teacher. So I taught ninth grade English and some electives. Before that, I actually have a background in psychology and mental health counseling, which is kind of where I got a lot of like the human systems and kind of behavioral theory and adult learning concepts from school. But like others who probably are kind of feeling similarly in their roles, um, overworked a lot of hours. I also had like just a really long commute and so I started looking elsewhere, kind of like looking what are some alternatives? What can I be doing? And so I was fortunate enough that I actually go way back with Devlin to college and we worked together, we're roommates together. And so I was just sharing some of my concerns and struggles. And they were like, you know that this is what I do, right? Like instructional design is something that's like excellent pivot, and has so many transferable skills for former educators, and that he personally has seen and witnessed. This is, several years ago, the transition of so many and how others are attempting this. And so I figured like that might be worth a shot. It combines so many of my interests and skill sets, and also, the promise of, higher earning potential and more flexibility and better work-life balance. I was like, check, check, check. And so I went for it, right? And so I actually ended up leaving my position midway through um, the school year because I just couldn't. It wasn't tenable any longer. So after winter break, I actually got married, went on honeymoon, and then came back and just jumped straight into it full time. And so I started like at the about 2 year. It's been over 2 years now, but at the end of January 2022, and kind of like what Jackie shared, I really tried making it as fast of a turnaround as possible. And so starting kind of late January, it took about like a couple months for me to finish the boot camp, and so I was applying to jobs by the end of March and working through all of the excellent resources that are available for creating websites and job interviewing and pouring through all these videos and attending things just like this. So this is just such an awesome opportunity to be on this side of it and be to share my experiences. So right now I'm a full-time instructional designer with a company called Power School. Some of you may be familiar with that if you've used it in your own classrooms. We are an ed tech company, and so we develop software, cloud-based solutions for school districts. And so I work on the curriculum team where we design training materials to help educators and districts learn how to implement these solutions. But my role is a little bit weird, and maybe we'll get into it in that we do on-site training. So we do conferences that are held around the country and now globally because we have an event in Dubai in a few months. And so we help support the trainers who are delivering these materials. And so that means that the resources I create may take a different form than some of the things that you might be kind of accustomed to. So hopefully maybe we can get into that too.
Love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Sean. So cool to see all of your different journeys and where all of your first ID roles were. That's super exciting. So thank you for sharing. All right.
Yeah, it's really fun, like, hearing your stories and, like, I think so many teachers can relate to a lot of the things you're saying of, like, why you look for something different. Never like to leave that, like, you still have that passion for education and learning and teaching, so finding another route for that and ID is, like, a great path for sure. Yeah, let's go ahead and start with the first one we have from Patricia. So, as a successful instructional designer who has transitioned smoothly into the role, what do you believe are the key characteristics that contribute to an instructional designer's success in their first 6 months on the job? And it's up on the screen displayed. So, yeah, anybody feel free to jump in and answer that.
I can share something of, you know, a willingness to just soak up as much as possible, at least when you're jumping into with technically a new career field, even though like a big part of this, right, is just how many of our skills are transferable and do apply to instructional design and are still effective. And you'll have a portfolio. So you've learned a lot of the technical skills. But even then, depending on the role, sometimes there's new even languages or interactions to kind of learn, especially if, I know some people have posted about, freelance and stuff, but if you go into a corporate role, there's going to be a lot of differences, right? Like it was different from going from a staff of maybe 100 teachers to several thousand employees in different departments and teams to be able to connect and collaborate with. And I'm sure someone like Kirstin can also offer insights into that, right? And so for me, in that part of it, if you are in a position like that, it's having a team around you that you can ask questions and not be afraid to kind of discover what are some of the etiquette pieces. How can I better manage how I interact with other teams, how I can be a better cross-functional player, and being able to just even learn like acronyms. I know it sounds kind of silly, but this is things that get in the way of workflow and productivity. And having open lines of communication and not being afraid to, what's the proper way for me to reach out to this person? Is it, okay for me to reach out directly to a manager? Should I be reaching out to someone below them first? Right. These are some things that, like process wise and productivity wise can mean a lot of success if you are willing to learn that language, learn how to best socially interact with people. Because when you get into these environments, a lot of your success depends on how you're representing yourself and the impression that people are getting from you, because you never know down the line when you're going to need to reach back out to that person or that connection for assistance or help on a project.
Anyone else want to chime in on that one before we move to another question?
Yeah, same thing. I think being, humble and humility, that's the biggest part because you're learning. It's a new, and if you're new to corporate, everything is new. If you're new to remote, everything is new. And the good thing about this, your teammates, your coworkers, is that they're also learners and former teachers, and they understand. So sometimes you have to let them guide you through whatever you're going, your project, whatever you're working on. But also, don't be afraid to show what you know. Like if you're good at Photoshop, or if you're good at storyline, you can always, don't be afraid to like let them know, hey, I know how to do this, or I know how to do that. And that will, that will also, take you a long way.
I would, kind of echo what everyone just said there as well, that try to breathe a little and not get too overwhelmed. I remember my first week, I was like kind of losing my mind a little bit because it was so much new stuff. And I was just like, what's an SST? What's an ILT? What does any of this mean? How do I even write narration? There was so much that went into it that I knew, but, my company has their own way of doing it, and it's very specific. And just how we were structured was new for me. As an ID in my company, we separate instructional design from development. So they're like two separate worlds. And sometimes there's crossover, but that was really different, because I had spent a lot of time, he personally, learning how to, work with triggers and conditions and, learning like the development side, when really my position became much more about like figuring out what they're learning and writing and designing the learning, and not really at all about really making it function as a course. So it was like that was kind of like being open to, okay, got myself here. It's a little different than I was like anticipating it would be, but it actually turned out to be really great. So I would say, being open and also just being kind to yourself and not expecting you're not going to be an expert right away. I'd say, I'm now at my company for 7 months. I started on September 6th. And, uh, it's taken probably until the 6 month mark to feel like, okay, I really know what I'm doing now. So just, be nice to yourself and trust that you'll get there.
Great advice from everyone. Great question and great answers. We are going to jump to the next question. Here is one about subject matter experts. So, do you work with subject matter experts, and what's that like? I know it's going to be different everywhere, so I'm curious to hear from all of you.
Well, I can go ahead and jump into that actually, because I just had a subject matter expert meeting this morning. I meet with them pretty frequently, and they're awesome, actually. They're like little treasure boxes of knowledge, because so much it's like, you're thrown projects and tons of content, and you have to turn it into a learning experience, and it's overwhelming. It can be really a lot to weed through and understand what you're even trying to have the learner to learn and do. And so having those subject matter expert meetings, those SME meetings, were, I think, a little a little kind of intimidating in the beginning, but very quickly you realize like, okay, these are the people that are going to help me and make sense of all of this information and help me kind of guide and what I need to do. So really, really great.
I'll just add that in my role, the way that I interact with subject matter experts is that since we support primarily instructor-led training, our trainers are some of our key, right, subject matter experts. And so not only because they have the in-depth product knowledge and experience to kind of, share some of the insights about what's new in the product and how it's actually impacting and affecting school districts, but also because they're in the training session, they're in the course, right? Actually interacting with our customers who are the educators, right? Oftentimes, like district administrators, system administrators, even teachers, principals, those kinds of roles, right? And so, since they have that frontline contact with who is ultimately the final person who's experiencing the content that we create and the curriculum that we create, they have firsthand knowledge as to how things are landing, what people are looking for, right? And so that is, as you mentioned, like just a giant treasure box, right, of content, of information that we can use. Because in my role, I don't have that direct contact with that user group, right? And so yet everything I do is informed by what's best for that user. So it's learning, right? how to appropriately develop your relationships with these subject matter experts so that you can rely upon them to give you honest feedback. And then also knowing, especially and I apologize, everything I'm going to say is about the corporate lens, right? Because that's where I work, but also knowing when you can tap into those resources because they have their own responsibilities, they have their own management, they have their own teams and project deadlines. And so they can't honestly be answering questions from you all day, every day. So you have to work through the proper channels and kind of determine, all right, do I have enough things to actually come to them and have a productive session of their time because their time is just as valuable as your own.
As for me, my subject matter experts are, um, they were at one point sales agents. I'm in the sales part of Medicare, and it's just our our trainings are very story driven. And when I hear their trainings and I mean their stories and how they, interacted with this person or this person, and some of them are success stories, some of them are not, but just listening to their stories and how they managed to, to be successful in the field, that's pretty fun. And as well as, as putting all these compliance pieces and all these things that they have to go through, it's fun just to listen to their stories and just like at first I was a little intimidated, but then I noticed that they were people and like you and me, and they're always willing to help you. And once they go through the script or the training that you're going through, they're like really excited to see that their words in all put together. And they're like, oh yeah, that's my story, or oh yeah, that's my that's what I said. And yeah, I do work very close with the subject matter experts. Um, like yeah, we work a lot. We like have meetings every week. So um, yeah, it's really nice to work with them.
Nice. That's all really, I think, really great to hear because I think when you are starting and you have to hear that like you're going to meet with subject matter experts, that is intimidating. And then to hear that, yeah, that they're excited and eager to help you as well because yeah, they're ready to share their expertise. Nice. Thank you all for sharing that. Our next question comes from Lisa. Says the ID job market feels really oversaturated right now. What are ways to help our resumes and portfolios stand out?
Fine, if I may, your portfolio is going to be very, very important. As for me, uh, when I had this job, a recruiter contacted me. He said, "Well, you have this quality, and I need you. You are a really, really good fit for this position." And when I was in the interview, they like my portfolio came up, and then they say like, "Hey, I love your portfolio. I love your games. I love your simulations." And oh, hey, it looks very Devlin Peck. Do you follow him? And I was like, "Oh yeah, I took the boot camp." And then they're like, "Oh yeah, I can tell." And they were very excited, yeah, to hear from someone who took the boot camp. And I think that one of the parts that really made me, I guess, um, set me apart from the rest of them was a portfolio. And of course, the resume, I, yeah, I mean, you can plug in all the keywords that you want to plug in, but at the end of the day, your portfolio and your expertise and talking the talk and knowing that's what's going to get you into say your foot in the door.
I'll say that I know that market conditions right now are very different, right? So I can only attest to like what I experienced a couple of years ago, but I think it's absolutely correct that your portfolio is already going to make a massive difference in standing out amongst a lot of people. You have to remember that just because hundreds of people are applying, that doesn't necessarily mean hundreds of people have also put in all of the same amount of work that you've done to develop your portfolio, to attend webinars like this, to learn the language, to hear people's experiences, right? And so it's easy to see these numbers and kind of have that cloud your judgment of thinking like, oh, everyone else must be doing the exact same thing, but it's actually not true, right? And not everyone's actually finishing and getting to the point where they're actually applying and have all of these materials. So I think it's also just having some self confidence. You can't really change, as hard as it is sometimes, right? But you can't really change what's happening around you, but you can only influence the things that you have direct control over. And so attending webinars like this and continuing to tinker with your website and continuing to develop your portfolio and your skill set is all within your control and is going to be only positive for you. And not only that, but just striking up the right conversations and continuing to reach out to others for just either guidance or their thoughts and opinions. I get to interact with a lot of people on LinkedIn through messages or even just phone calls and Zoom chats and coffee chats. And I love doing that because I did the exact same thing. And those, you never know where they're going to lead. Sometimes they don't, the person you're interacting with can't offer anything outside of their own experiences and guidance and assistance. But you never know if that conversation, they'll think about you. Oh, wait a minute, there's a position that's open, or you do actually cross paths with somebody who is in a position to hire. So just that having that personability and looking for those conversations is also a key thing that can differentiate yourself.
I think that was really well said. I would also say a similar thing as well, just when you're choosing your project, think of something that's relatable but also interesting, try to go about it creatively. Um, Having your website feel very organized and clean, your portfolio website, not overly busy, something that looks professional. It doesn't need to have all the bells and whistles. I think it just needs to like get the point across. Um, for me, I feel like that really made a difference. And also, yes, I would absolutely second that, even though you see those numbers super high, I think that's really like it's misleading because so many of them are not submitting portfolios. They're just like, "Oh, well, I was a teacher. Here's my resume." And they think that that's enough, and it's not most of the time, almost always, So I wouldn't let that be a discouragement, but just apply. I think I applied to almost 40 positions and I got 2 interviews, out of all of those applications. So, and, obviously the one turned into my position now. So that was great. But it took just like getting them out there and just going for it, and eventually you'll find your place.
Love that awesome advice from all of you. Love hearing all of that and really, really, really great input. So the next question we have is how do you know what good versus great looks like since this type of work is new for me? I don't have a benchmark. So I get nervous if I'm doing a good job or not. I think this one can be really relatable because it can be really easy to want to go above and beyond and great can look different for a lot of different people and what company expectations are. So yeah, it's a really great question.
Well, I just want to say, I think if we're talking specifically about like portfolio or the work you're doing to try to like land a job, right? Um, you're always going to be your greatest kind of critic, right? And you're going to know this, as in depth as possible because you're the one who's in it all day working on it. So you know where the flaws are, you know where the seams are, right? But as like Jackie just mentioned, right? Like sometimes it's more effective to actually just have something out there, right? And to have different things out there because, um, unfortunately, like what you are creating as your portfolio, as nice as it is really just to show how you could take someone else's content and do something with it, right? It's really just a vehicle for showing them the skills that you've developed. The person that might be hiring you has their own set of things that need to be turned into an instructional design experience or a learning experience and their own type of content. So it doesn't necessarily always 100% matter, you know, the content in the sense of like, it needs to be 100% perfect, but it's more so like, can you show that you can transform, right, these questions into an experience, that you can transform these learning objectives into an experience. And so, sure, the visuals are impactful and leave an impression, but it means that it doesn't necessarily need to be 100% perfect, right? And having different types of experiences sometimes may even far more outweigh just one super, super perfect type of experience, right? You can show like I can also create like a job material or a job aid, right? And I can also um, use these kind of mentor characters, even if maybe it's not necessarily as perfectly flawless as you might want. And I think you'll kind of surprise yourself, like you mentioned, that because you're your own critic, like it probably just actually does look really, really great just to the person who's going through these materials and hiring. And it's really just meant to get you in the door, show what you can do with what they have for you.
Nice. Yeah. Great answers. Um, and I think this next one is really, it kind of leads into that. So we have like how we can stand out on our portfolios. And then how has that translated or like the things you have on your portfolios, are those similar to projects you're working on now? So what kinds of projects are you working on?
I can go ahead and jump in. So my company works with various other companies. So we work with like Amazon, or actually right now we're working with Blue Cross Blue Shield. And and we've worked with Lululemon and just like all kinds of different, corporate companies like that. And then we create training for them. So I guess my projects are usually always storyline based. Sometimes they're also rise as well, articulate rise. And then sometimes I will do like instructor led PowerPoints as well. Uh, but it's kind of a variety for sure. Definitely a large array. But I would say typically, it's storyline. Every now and then, like, I just got off this project, that was all content writing. And that's not quite as fun, I will be honest. That's a little more on the dry side than doing, like, storyline interactions, which become super fun once you get, used to them and good at them. Um, but it was still a different experience and something I really, like, gained a lot of experience from learning and really helped me, like, uh, learn how to connect with SMEs really well because that was a lot of really dense content. But yeah, so that's what my projects typically look like.
For us, we do a lot of storyline. Um, and yeah, we would finish a computer-based training about um, you know, compliance and as everything is on storyline because that's compliance is like really, but but it's it's you do it at your own pace. And after that, now we're working on another piece, and this is more of the BIOT. And we had one done and now we're working on another one. And I work with a team of six. So right now, some of them are working on updates and some of us are working on other deliverables that we need to do. But mainly for us, it's a lot of CVTs, and I have um, well, I have that on my portfolio. And then, VILTs and a lot of job aids, like job aid here, everywhere. So, yeah.
So in my role, we do actually a lot more work with rides. And so part of the reason for that is the ability for future maintenance and to be able to kind of replicate things. And also because we have a very like not stringent, but we have like the over the course of several years have developed like a very like in-depth templating style and kind of style guide. And that's something to kind of could also be like a discussion point too about kind of like style guides and templates and working within certain kind of rules that have been set up by your team and department. And so because of that, we develop a lot. And as I mentioned previously, that most of the training that I directly support is delivered through a trainer, right? And so that's going to be presentations, is what they're typically using, but more often than not, they're actually in the product. And so what I do create is a supplement kind of e-learning equivalent to the course that customers or, those who attend our conferences or training conferences can access at home on their own when they leave the conference. And so it's meant to kind of have a lot of the same, content as well as activity steps, as well as images and interaction stuff. But ultimately, because we are supporting over like 100 different courses that get updated almost every other month just because of product releases and feature updates. Like the amount of time that we are in kind of update phases means that it has to be pretty fast paced in order to be able to get these updates out there. And so on our team, we can't do a lot of like storyline just because the updates are coming so frequently that it's going to start bogging us down a little bit. And that's just kind of, I guess, decisions that have been made, in the past. But there is an alternate, like a equivalent to my team that is also in the same department that does create on-demand training, and they experiment and use a lot of storyline. And they use like video training and tons of different resources like Beyond, right? And so it kind of just depends, right? Ultimately, where your role ends. But I just want to share that ours is kind of slightly different, where we just do a ton of like rise work and a lot of presentations, and a lot of supplements for trainers.
Thank you all so much for sharing. It's so true that no ID roles are exactly the same. And so it's really cool to hear what you're working on and how different it is, but also, there's some similarities at the same time and what you choose to focus on, but the deliverables are different. So thank you so much. So this next question is, about being successful, but also to be part or to be successful, you have to land that job. And so this is a really good question about interviewing. So what do you consider the top 3 most important questions to prepare for in an interview? And if you don't have 3, that's okay. Like, if we have 1 from each of you or a really important one for each of you, but, what's important to be able to prepare for that interview successfully?
I think there's like this thing called the imposter syndrome. You have to get rid of that. Because when you step into the interview, you're an instructional designer and act as an instructional designer. So that was one of the things that helped me. Another thing that I get nervous when I talk like public speaking. This is like a lot to me. I'm taking. You can't see it, but I'm taking, and and you have to get rid of that. And one person told me, a coach told me, you have to say, "I'm nervous" in the interview. Because I mean, if this is your first interview as an instructional designer, of course, that's something that you haven't experienced before. And so you have to say, "I'm sorry, I'm nervous." And just by saying, "I'm sorry, I'm nervous," um, your nervousness goes away, and it's magical. It works. And another question, I think the top important questions are working with SMEs, knowing your tools, because that was one of the things they asked me this question. Um, so, have you ever worked with PowerPoint, blah, 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 presentation, blah, 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 and can you give us an example? And I was like, yes. So, know your tools and also be ready to defend every part of your resume. You have to have a story, or you have to not make it up, but you have to back up everything that you have on your resume, because they're gonna go. Sometimes they just like, and then, oh yeah, it's your resume says that you have experience doing this. Be ready to respond to that.
I know that one question I received that I also have seen now being in the role, why it's so important is how you handle criticism and how you handle feedback. Particularly because at least when I was a teacher, like you're kind of like a one man per show, right? Like you are in charge of everything from the beginning to the end of how things run in your classroom. I know there's exceptions and stuff like that, right? But usually, whatever you decide is going to be on the lesson plan, like you can make happen, right? However, things are going to function timing wise, how things look, even down to the actual copy that's written on papers, right, is up to you. And it doesn't need to be run past a lot of people in some cases. And so when I go into this role, though, it's different. We have like a process where anything that I create goes through a QA process to make sure that there are like things are actually factual and correct, right? And it goes through an editing process with an editor to make sure that it aligns with the style guides that we create, right? And so you are going to be constantly, at least in my role, receiving feedback on things that you probably thought were fine or good as is, right? And so experiencing that and knowing that it's for the benefit of the final product, it's for the benefit of yourself as a person, and it's for the benefit of yourself as a professional. And ultimately, the person who's going to be enjoying that experience is benefiting the most from all of these different revision steps and iterative steps. But knowing that there's going to be backtracking, knowing that there's going to be things that aren't perfect on the first try, and that it's not some kind of affront against you or anything, at least for me, is was one of like the important questions in the interview process of how I would handle that and my beliefs surrounding that. That really stood out, at least I know in terms of with my interviewers. And the last thing I'll also add is that I also find it just as important to have your own questions prepared for the interviewer and what you can glean from those questions that you have. I know there's tons of resources on that, but I would also put that in there as something that will really make you stand out and to have that prepared just as much as you are prepared for the questions that they're you.
Yeah, really great point. It's not just an interview of you, you're also interviewing them too, right? Looking for that perfect fit for you as well. Great insights. So, one of the things that makes instructional design appealing to a lot of people is that most of the opportunities are remote and that flexibility. So, do all of you work from home? And can you talk more about the flexibility of your ID position?
Yes, I do work from home. It seems we all do as we're sitting in our rooms in our homes. But yeah, no, it's been great. I mean, that was honestly one of the big motivating factors for me to become an ID. Felt like it made sense for me as a creative person, as an artist, and as a teacher. It just kind of like, made sense for who I am. But also, I was about to have a baby for in my personal story. So I was like, I want to leave teaching so I can be home with her. Granted, it was hard, and I definitely eventually, had to have some help because, you know, I needed time to actually work throughout the day. But overall, like, that flexibility has been amazing. Um, I have, I would say, a decent amount of, like, I can decide when I work, but for the most part, I do have a pretty steady workflow, like, all day long, Monday through Friday. Like, it's not Like there are giant gaps of time where I'm just able to do whatever. It is pretty like intensive, I will say. And I'm not trying to like, scare anyone by any means, but I felt like, I'd been teaching for almost 10 years. So that to some degree became kind of almost easy. And I think the hardest part of teaching, at least for me, was showing up every single day and being there every single day. Whereas now I'd say the hardest part is just like, you're a producer of things, of products, of learning, and you're constantly producing things. And with my company, I mean, it's like such a fast turnaround. We're expected to produce a lot very quickly. Now, not when I was like first starting. I definitely had a really supportive team behind me that were like very very willing to help me and guide me and help me get there. And, I was obviously much slower the first few months. But yeah, that flexibility has been amazing for me and for my life. So definitely one of the biggest perks of the job. Absolutely.
It's I also work fully remote. And one of the absolute massive advantages is, of course, like the small way that you get time just back into your life. And it's not even really a small way because if you think about like the types of commute that some may have, like when I was working as a teacher, I had an almost hour long commute there and an hour long commute back, right? That's already 2 hours, 10 hours a week that just have gotten redeposited back into my life. And so, but not only that, just the time to get ready for your commute, the time to prepare for, you're even just to take your lunch, like all of these small things, right, really start adding up and just provides such an immense like mental relief and just the ability to be able to do small side things, right? Like fortunate enough that and our job is to encourage that it's okay. Like if you need to go take a walk outside for just a little bit, or like let the dogs out, or swap something out from the laundry, right? Like it's not necessarily considered like as long as you're being responsible and professional, like your judgment is trusted, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, as long as your deliverables are being met and your work quality is not dropping, that's kind of what at least my management team has instilled in us. And so, because they know all that stuff feeds into your happiness and your productivity levels and your ability to perform as an individual. And so, yeah, the flexibility has been just absolutely massive. But similarly, I also maintain a schedule just because that's the structure schedule is the best way that works for me. And just having kind of set hours, but really, if I wanted to, it could be slightly different hours or adjusted in that kind of way. Um, and so it's just going to depend on the role, but ultimately, like remote really is something that's greatly impacted and changed my life for the better.
Yes, same, same. I have a kid, so I wanted to be home and I wanted to be around. So, she is 5 minutes away from me, and if she needs anything, I can run. For my company, we do have, what we call core hours, and I have to be present and those, during those hours. But there's always the flexibility. Hey, I need to do this. I need to go here. I need to go that. And as long as I, let my lead, um, no, then I can just do it and then come back and flex my hours a little bit. But overall, it's really nice to work from home. I mean, the 2 hours I work out sometimes, not every day, but I do. My coworkers, aka my dogs, annoy me all the whole day. So sometimes I'm like I let them out, and it's just fun. And sometimes one of them just sits on my lap the whole day, and then he leaves. So yeah, just spending time and being home and, cooking for me was a big thing. Uh, I s I thought I was gonna cook more, but I don't, and that's it's nice to work from home. It's really nice.
Thank you all for sharing. It's nice to hear about the flexibility you all have now, and I've felt similar. I think it's really cool to be able to work from home. And now, in terms of how you all successfully were able to transition into ID, where did you find your position? So Terry says the usual job boards don't seem to work well. So how did you find that position, or how did you find your current position?
Mine was through a LinkedIn. I did find my position through there.
For me, recruiter, called me. He called me directly, and he didn't send an email or anything. So I thought it was a little fishy, and then he sent all the he sent the email, and then I looked him up, and oh yeah, he's legit. So I went ahead and applied, and that's how I got my, how I got my but I think it was through DICE, I think. I
Yeah, my role, I actually came across through Devontex communities. At the time, it was on Slack. I know it's moved to a different kind of community portal, but same thing where there was a channel that opportunities would get posted in. And so, actually, my current manager was someone who had posted an opportunity in that channel because he'd been involved in the community and kind of seen all the things going on with the boot camp. And so, I just applied to that link, and I reached out to him as well, just kind of starting that conversation piece and being like, "Hey, I applied to the position. Just want to learn a little bit more about it and yourself and the role and stuff." And it was the portfolio that really was the standout piece that was like, "Yeah, let's go ahead and just take this conversation further." But I also applied places where I received interviews from LinkedIn, as well as Indeed, and as well as recruiters kind of reaching out. So it seems like there isn't like a perfect kind of one size fits all. And it really is just trying to spread out your opportunities as much as possible across all places. Right.
I wanted to add a little note to that too, as well. I think sometimes it can help. I'm trying to think. It can help to find the position on one of those job boards and then go directly to their website and apply through there. I don't know. It might, maybe it's just might be me being superstitious, but I did do that with my current position. I applied directly through their website on their job posting, but I had found it on LinkedIn. So I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they just like check that more frequently. I'm not sure.
Yeah, great tips. And yeah, I think a lot of you, like Sean said, there's no like perfect way to find a job, but that the power of your network is also really beneficial. So letting people know, like, hey, these are the kinds of jobs that I'm looking for. These are the skills I have, because then maybe they hear something from someone else and say like, oh, I know somebody, and they can bring up your name. So even just using that power of your network is really another great way to find some of those roles. All right. This next one is a good one because I think we talked about this too, how everything is so new when you start on the job. So, how did you get up to speed with the company practices? And then, how does this differ from what you learned in the boot camp? I guess, like the process of the flagship, how's that different than like what you're doing now, those practices?
I'll tie this one back to that interview question one too, because I think it's really important to try to find out about this during the interview process, right? Because everyone's not going to be the same no matter where you go. And everyone's going to be completely different in how they approach it. But for me getting up to speed, I was fortunate enough that at my company, my team specifically had kind of a plan in place for bringing someone on board. And so, how learning bits and pieces of our overall kind of workbook process and kind of assigning these smaller tasks first with a lot of guidance and kind of support. And so, I would first start by observing someone kind of going through what they were trying to teach me. Then they would give me something small to work on my own. And then it would gradually kind of fall into place where I finally realized that I just learned kind of separate components that ultimately then become the overall workflow that I would then be responsible for. But this was something I had asked about during my interview process and asked them what did the next, 3 months, the next 6 months look like as trying to bring me on board and up to speed? Were they expecting me to just immediately get started the first week and just jump right in? Which, when I asked a different place I was interviewing at, was kind of like their answer. And so to me, I didn't feel like I was in the position to take on that kind of responsibility since I hadn't been an instructional designer yet. Maybe in the future, that's something that could be different. But at this time, I knew that I needed more guidance and I needed more support early on. And so I was trying to make sure I clued into that and was asking for that. So I think it's going to depend, but you could probably get some of those insights if you're asking for them during your interview process.
Sean, I think that sounds great. I would absolutely agree with you. Um, during the interview asking, so if I am hired, if I get this position, what are my first few weeks going to look like? That, first of all, I mean, makes it look like you're really excited about it. You're really interested. You're on board. You want to be there. But also, it does like kind of give you like, okay, yeah, what am I getting into? Because it is a little scary. And also, I would say asking who your support system is going to be, because really how you're going to learn is by asking questions. Because, often companies are busy, there's a lot going on. And I'm not saying that they're not going to have a training designated for you. I mean, I did have that. I had like, I think 2 or 3 weeks of doing like solid PD and training before I was actually put on a real project. Um, but, it really wasn't until I started doing the real projects that I really started to, like, learn a lot. And, you're gonna make mistakes. I remember the first storyboard I made was kind of horrendous, just a little bit. I mean, it wasn't horrible, but it was really not to the standards of where I am today. So, and that's okay. I mean, people are there to help you. I mean, that's part of, you have this kind of like supportive workforce and team. Hopefully, I would assume most places, you can expect that. That they're if they want you there, they know where you're coming from. Especially if you're honest. You're honest, you're like, yeah, I was a teacher. This is new for me, but I know I have a lot of transferable skills. I know I can do this. There will be a learning curve, but I'm excited and willing to learn, and most people are extremely receptive to that.
Yeah, same thing. The first few weeks were a lot of trainings and getting familiar with everybody, a lot of meetings. And my first assignment was QA. Um, yeah, quality assurance. And I think I did that for about 3 days, and it was just fun. And it was a good way to like step into the project and see what was going on. And after that, we did a lot of development in Spanish. And then after that, we started slowly like getting into other projects and bigger responsibilities. And yeah, it's not like when you're teaching like your first day, you have to be ready because you have kids waiting for you at the door. This is like more the transition is easier.
Love that. And thank you for all of you kind of mentioned the trainings that you had initially, because that was another question someone had as well is what types of training did you get? And so thank you for going into that and really, really good input. And so our next question is what are some opportunities for IDs that love to write and create content courses, but aren't as strong as facilitation for ILT? So maybe in your current roles, what are some things that you see that might be a good fit for somebody that isn't necessarily looking for facilitation roles?
That's a tough one for me because everything I create is for IoT. So I don't unfortunately have very many perspectives to offer for this. But I will try to think on apologize.
Totally fair.
Feel like it depends, where you get your position because I mean, in my current role, I don't really do a whole lot of instructor led training. I mean, I do sometimes, like I just did one a few months back, but more often we're doing like self-paced learning experience, storyline courses or articulate rise courses. So I think it just depends like when you're doing your research on that particular company that you're going to be working for, just like seeing what they do, their portfolio, like what kind of products do they have out there? What are they known for? And then that would kind of, I think, lead into what you think your role might consist of. It makes sense, I would say, for you, Sean, your role working with Power School, it makes sense to me why you would have a lot more, instructor led. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah, and also maybe depends too, like on where that question's coming from, right? Like if
mhm,
or do you have like if that person has genuine experience and doing instructional and they know they dislike that or they know that they're not good at it. But if it's like a question like you're thinking you may not be good at or you're thinking you may not be a good fit, then it could be something that you may surprise yourself with as well and kind of
yeah,
get into supports for it also because there's a difference in sometimes what you assume it looks like and what it's gonna feel like versus actually trying
mhm.
to, right?
That's a very good point. Yeah, maybe don't put yourself in a box, just
Yeah.
like be open to whatever.
And open to people helping support and train you into that role and
Oh,
into
yeah, for sure.
if you're interested. But of course, if they're not, that's something that they just
Yeah.
don't want to do, then of course.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really good input. And just to throw that into it, there, like we've all talked about, ID roles are so different, and a lot of times you also can be asked to just develop an ILT, but not facilitate it. They'll have the subject matter expert sometimes facilitating. It really just depends on what you're doing, but there is a lot of variety. Most ID jobs aren't just training facilitation. There's a lot of different things involved. But great advice mentioned on it's really helpful to just start looking at job descriptions and see the different types of jobs that are out there. And if you're really not interested in facilitation, then you'd probably want to go a different route. But I think looking through job descriptions are going to be really helpful.
Yeah,
Um,
that was a good question because yeah, the ID umbrella is so big. And so you can definitely find a spot where you are happy and where it's things that you are excited to do. Um, we are coming up on the end of the hour. So I do just really want to thank our guests. So thank you, Sean, Lucy, and Jackie for for being with us today and sharing all these really great insights and tips. Definitely something I wish I would have attended when I was looking into instructional design myself, because this really does ease those fears of like getting to hear from people who have done it and are there and are working. So thank you again for sharing those stories. Jackie, Lucy, and Sean all went through the bootcamp before landing their ID role that they're in now. And if you'd like to receive highly personalized feedback and guidance on the transition process to set you up for success on the job, just like they did, feel free to apply today. We'd love to work with you in the bootcamp community. You'll be taken to the bootcamp page once this event ends. And keep working on the transition. Stay tuned to our YouTube channel for more free content to help you through the process. And we'll see you all around. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.